Hello there. Hello, friends. My mixer was unplugged. Welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. Welcome to a Q&A session, which will first be a coding session. So yesterday, I only streamed for about an hour, but we worked on my overlay. But this morning, I woke up early again, and I've updated things. So the APIs that I was using yesterday, the YouTube one and the Patreon one, which I had deployed to my backend, I've now combined them into a single API. It's still two different endpoints, but now we have api.coding.garden that has a members endpoint. And I also added socket integration with the Streamlabs socket API. So whenever a new YouTube member comes in, it should show up automatically. And then there's also a Patreon pledges endpoint. And that is set up with the Patreon webhook endpoint. So now they're all under one API. So the first thing we're going to do is update the overlay to work with this API. And then we'll update the Q&A website to show a member icon next to any YouTube members, which should be pretty easy now that we have these endpoints. And then we'll get going. And hello, everyone. Welcome to the stream. Hello, Adine. Welcome. Hello, Miku. I'm here. I'm here right now. Hello, Daniel Garden. Hello, Marik. Hello, Nuruddin. Hello, Eamon. I'm doing good. Yes, I got some good rest. I've been waking up super early, and I feel great. Hello, Spacey Cat. It's been a while. Welcome back. Hope you're having a good holiday. Hello, Vouter. Hello, Katoli. Hello, I'm a hot grill. Welcome. Hello, Ed. Hello, Kamalesh. Yeah, I messed up. I went live, and also I didn't update my initial overlay, which said thanks for watching. I don't know. Welcome, everyone. Hello, Kamalesh. Hello, Domenico. Hello in Dzień dobry. I don't know what language that is, but hello. Does that mean hello? Motivation says, I need your stream today. I just received bad news in the mail, and now you show up. It's a great gift. Well, that's unfortunate, Motivation. We're here if you need us, and thanks for hanging out. Hopefully things get better. And hello, Lawrence. Hello, Lakshan. It is currently 7:58 a.m. I'm in GMT -7. Spacey Cat says, yeah, I've been away for a bit. Exams and holidays happened, but I passed all my classes. Congrats! Congrats! Is there an A+ emoji? Is that a thing? A? No, we can do that. We could do that. And we could do plus that. A+? I mean, maybe you didn't get A+, but congrats on passing. Lakshan is learning C#. Very good. Is it Polish? Cool. Yeah, I've never I've never seen the Polish language before. Hello, Heretic. Nice. Did it mean hello? Let me know. All right, let's get going. So as I mentioned, we have these new endpoints. So I'm going to open up my overlay, which is now in supporter credits. We'll open this up, and basically we have to change some things. We were working on stuff yesterday. It won't be too much different, but one thing that has changed is the YouTube endpoint is now a feathers endpoint. A+ in the code units. Nice. That's pretty much how I was. I got most like A's in computer science and math, and then other things were like B's and stuff like that. But yeah, cool. And then the other thing is they are both underneath the same API. And hello, Joundi. Welcome to the stream. All right. So first thing I'll do is I'll just create a single API variable because now they're all at api.coding.garden. Great. And then I can do my socket connection against that single URL. But the one thing that will be different is whenever I get members, so get patrons, what does this do? It calls client.service pledges. So the way I've done this is the backend service now has an endpoint or a feather service that is Patreon/pledges. So that's great. And then similarly, getting members is the same thing because it's a feather service, but it's going to be YouTube/members. Like so. The other thing I did, which I should have done to begin with, was before they had different property names, but now I've normalized it. So under the user's endpoint, it says level and level ID, and then similarly, well, that's YouTube members, and then similarly under the Patreon Pledges endpoint, it has level and level ID. So they have similar property names, so we can clean up that user creation function, which is this thing. And now we don't have to care about support type or support property. It's really just going to be user.level.amountSense, user.level.level ID. Cool. And this is user.level.level ID. Very good. And then user.level. Cool. So now, because both endpoints have the same properties, it simplifies things, which is great. We don't need to pass in any extra stuffs for these. And really, we could just do one function. Let's call this like add user to page. Yeah, add user to page. Well, and then we can pass in the parent, because we do want to append patrons to one location and members to another location. Cool. So now we need to call this add user to page. And so when we do patrons, we'll say add user to page, and we'll pass in the patrons element, because that's the parent. And then very similarly, and then these are no longer called rewards, these are called levels. I really only need to change it there. And then again, add user to page. I realize if you've never seen this before, you have no idea what I'm working on, but pretty soon you'll be able to see the page and it'll all make sense. The interesting thing is, we really can reuse this function right here. So this function can be reused for both services now, because they both have the same stuffs. So here's what I want to do. We're going to put this in a function. We're going to call it add users to page. Well, it's more like this. Whoa. We'll get there. Let's go back. So I want this. I'm going to say function add users to page. We'll put that in there, and then it's not an arrow function. There we go. And we'll also pass in the parent element here. So we'll say like parent, and then we'll pass in the parent. Here we go. Parent. Cool. We also need the service name, because we're going to be listing for when things are created. So let's say service name right there. Okay, so now that we have this wonderful function, we can do something like this. So both get patrons and get members return a promise. So I'm going to promise all them. Let's say promise.all. We're going to wait for both getting all the patrons and getting all the members. And then we're going to get back the patrons and the members, like so. And then we can say add users to page with the service name Patreon/pledges with the Patreon patrons element, and we'll pass in the users. Patrons. Cool. And then similarly, we can say use the new promise method, promise dot what was it? All settled. It shouldn't throw an error. I don't need to worry about that, do I? And so then this one becomes add users to page with YouTube/members. And we want the members element, I think, which is a variable. So this should do it. Famous last words. Yeah, it shouldn't throw an error. It should be fine. So before I run this code, which is gonna work on the first try, of course, um, let me catch up really quick. There are a few more people that said hello. Good evening, Ashwin. Hello, Ed. Hello, Coding Pasta. What's up, Doc? I like saying what's up, Doc. I don't know if you've recognized that now. Hello, Mono. Hello, Marquez. Motivation is saying, I watched a programming course, and the instructor, when he does Alt-Tab, he has an icon of a Google Chrome, but it's yellow and orange. You know what that is? Yeah, so that's Google Chrome Canary. Let's talk about that. So Google Chrome Canary is the latest and greatest Google Chrome features. There could be potentially beta or alpha features in there, but basically this is a nightly build of Chrome that has the latest and greatest features. So get on the bleeding edge of the web. So this has features in it that are not yet released in the stable channel. So this icon, like the regular Chrome, this one is the stable channel, and this one, latest and greatest features. So it says it's for developers because you can test out newer features. Newer things that get added to JavaScript will be available in Canary before they're available in the regular one. So that's the thing. Famous last words. Hello, Ron. What's up? Yep, the beta version. My voice sounds different. I don't know. I might be a little stuffed up. Thanks for stopping by, Impy. Have a good day. What's up, Doc? And hello, Josh. Welcome. All right. Is it going to work? Let's, wait. It needs to be IP address 102. So, hey, it works. It's really fast. Why is it so fast? So it works, but we need to work on the styles. And so one thing I remembered from yesterday is we were trying to make it. You know, we might have sped it up just to see if it was working. Blink. Blink. I'm gonna hide that. But we wanna make it 2-column. Hello, Canonello. Welcome. We want to make it a 2-column layout. And yesterday we did flexbox, flex direction, column, which would not wrap things. So we actually need flex direction. I think that's where we messed up yesterday. But let's look at our styles. Let's see what we did wrong. Because, oh, I know why. I added this animation. So basically, we only want to add the animation after we've added both members to both things. So that's one thing that definitely needs to change. And the user's length, that's probably why it was like 0 seconds, because they're the second time there's only 3 users versus the 44 users in the other way. Q&A should be working. Yeah, let me know if it's not. But if you go to qa.coding.garden, yeah, we have some new questions in there. There we go, questions coming in. Feel free to submit a question, because when we're done with all of this, I'll start answering questions. I have more time than I did yesterday, so we'll be here for a few hours. Cool. Whoa. And hello, Mattia. What's up? Tipsy Ninja says they submitted their project on the coding school project on Seedling School. Cool. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to spend much time on it, but I would hope, and maybe those of you that are in the chat that have had a chance to work on it, even though I haven't been able to review your specific project, hopefully the requirements themselves, looking at other people's projects, seeing me do reviews of other people's projects, that potentially helps you with your project, even though I haven't been able to review your project specifically. Hopefully, that is my hope. Marquez did not get the job. Better luck next time. That's a great attitude. Basically, keep that attitude, but also know that rejections are a thing, and that's the reality of it. So as long as you keep that mentality, you're gonna find something. Good morning, Zach. Have a good day. Thanks for dropping by. Good morning, Chris. Welcome. Let's see. Yeah, so I could probably we could do something with that. What we might do, and what might be fun, is refactor the Q&A website to use Feathers Vuex, because right now it's not. I just have some custom code that is calling my backend services, but we could potentially refactor it. That might be a bit of work, but it would be interesting to show you how it all works. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to take the length of both arrays, and that's the total duration of the animation. So I'll say patrons.length plus members.length, and that whole thing times 2. And that should, let's see, is there an error? Oh, no, that's wrong, actually. It's .users.length. Let's do this. Let's create a variable called number of users. And that's going to be patrons.users.length plus members.users.length. That should do it. There we go. Nice. All right, now let's get a 2-column layout, which theoretically should be pretty easy. So first thing, instead of making it very thin, let's make this 80 view width. It should be full width there. Cool. And then we're going to make the patrons and members section. So if we look in the HTML, members and patrons, those are where they get appended. We're going to make both of those flex boxes. Display flex. We'll leave it as flex direction row because we want it to wrap like this. We'll say flex wrap. And I think that should do it, and then we'll set the patron width to be 42% of the parent. Would you look at that? That's pretty good. So all we need to do is just really like center it. We could probably even make it like 50%. Let's see. What'll happen if we do that? Yeah, look at that. It's beautiful. Not bad. Cool. I think one thing I might do is I can actually sort by, so right now it's sorted by date. So if you look at the dates, this is basically, so for YouTube, Cananello was the first member, Hippo Viva was the second, and Toby was the third. So it's currently ordered. Yeah, I think I'll remove the times 2 because this is very slow. But we could sort it by pledge amount instead of by date. Let's show that really quick. And it should be pretty easy because I have a backend route that does that. So we can just pass in a query, and we'll say sort is amount. Let's call this query options, and we'll reuse it. And then they should be sorted by the amount and date. Yeah, so Toby is a fertilizer, which is a little bit more than a droplet. I think I might do it by amount, because then they're sorted by amount and date. So once you get into a certain tier, you'll see the person that's been at that tier the longest. Yeah, we've got a lot of fertilizers. Okay, let's speed it up too. So right now it's 2 seconds per user. We're just gonna do 1 second per user. There we go. Not bad. Yeah, it's a different Joshua. But also I've anonymized it, so it's just what do you call it? It's just the first name. So to anonymize it, we're only seeing people's first names. Yeah, and then we see the $1 droplets. Danny has been a droplet since June of 2018. Thank you, Danny, and a longtime supporter. That's not bad. That's pretty good. We can show that multiple times in a stream, and it doesn't take forever to load. Right? It is very capitalist. I completely agree. but it's an incentive, right? Like, I mean, these people are giving me their hard-earned money. Um, so it's really for them. It's not for me, in a way. I don't know. Should I not do that? Let me know. Let me catch up. Um, Pranjal is saying, throw some light on the this keyword in context of an arrow function. Add that on the Q&A website, because that would be a fun, that'd be a fun little coding demonstration. Because we can talk about the fact that the arrow functions cannot be bound. They always have lexical this, and it would be cool to show some examples. So add it on there, and we'll get to it. Hello, S&G Creations. What's up? I'm doing pretty good. Pranjal is asking, do I directly apply stickers to my laptop, or is there some kind of sticker plate? Yeah, I have a case. So this is a MacBook, and I have this plastic case on it. And that makes it really easy to buy a new one, take this off, and then just do a whole new set of stickers. And I have all of my old ones saved. So I might frame those or something one day. I don't know. Yeah. Hello, Noel. Welcome. Toby says, I may spawn more seedlings, I guess, or help. Is that because you're a fertilizer? But yeah. Cool. Spacey Cat, thanks for the question. We'll get to it. Hello, Ronnie. Welcome. Yes, welcome, memes. Tipsy Nim just says, is it, well, so this is, Patreon and, YouTube members. If you've donated, I do set you as a droplet in the Discord, but your name will not appear here. Your name is only here if you're a patron or a member. I might change the role in Discord just to differentiate between one-time donations versus pledges and members. But that might be why you're not listed on here. Well, I give us your time and knowledge. Yeah. I don't know. Who's gonna stop watching Coding Garden because I am now a capitalist pig that sorts by sorts by amount. Maybe at the end show the oldest patron and the highest pledge amount. I like that. Yeah. It could just be like a one little screen that says, shout out to Danny for being the patron for the long. He's always going to be the oldest. And then shout out to Daniel. They both have the same name, which is interesting. Daniel for being a $25 patron. Yeah, that'd be good. What software would I use to keep software windows and layout? I use Spectacle, which is a Mac app. But I like it. I have all the keyboard shortcuts memorized, and they're very easy to memorize. You can see all the shortcuts there, but I can like full screen that, left screen it, right screen it, quarter screen it, top screen it, bottom screen it. I can do top left corner, top right corner, top left corner, bottom right, full, half. But yeah, that's Spectacle. My entry file full of computer cases, that'd be good, right? All right, I need to know who's gonna stop watching Coding Garden because of the sorting order. Another thing is, so right now the good morning, Levi. Welcome. Hello, Jano. What you got for us? Not me. All right. Words per minute. I think I average like either 50 or 60. I don't know. Let's actually change this initial text to be an H2. Can't stop, won't stop. Let's make these H1s. We just started. I've been live for 26 minutes, and we have updated the overlay. We now have a 2-column layout, and I have a new backend endpoints. And so this overlay should update whenever new patrons or members get added. One thing I just remembered is I'm gonna do this. So if it's an array, then I need to iterate. Is array data dot for each user. We'll do this. Else we just do it individually. Hello, Conrad. Welcome. Because my members endpoint, when it calls the created, like my YouTube members endpoint, when it calls created, there potentially could be multiple that were created. It basically finds any new ones that weren't currently in the array. So if it's an array, we need to iterate. Otherwise, we just add them directly to the page. I think I should do it. However, I'm curious why it's starting. Oh, you know what? Credits, translate Y, 100 view height, 110 view height. Is that not enough? $130. Let's do this. I need to figure out how to get that below the screen at the beginning. 150? That's still not enough. Why is it so much? It really should just be 100. Because the Y will be, I don't know. But 200 should probably do it. Yeah, that should do it. And then we'll add the animation back. Oh, I saw that, Andrew. I didn't get to tune in because I was working, but how'd it go? How was your live stream? That's a little too fast, I think. We gotta go a little bit slower. Let's do number of users times 1.2 seconds. I think that's good. Cool. All right. We've done it. Let us use the actual overlay, and I'm going to put it above the drop game. Go right there. All right. Coding Garden is brought to you by viewers like you, including all of these wonderful people that support me on both Patreon and YouTube. Thank you so much. Shout out to Toby Cananello and Hippo Viva, who are the first YouTube members. Much appreciated. And here are all the other Patreons as well. Or patrons, members, supporters. And thanks for the follow, The Real Pygon. Welcome. Conrad says, the live stream where you set up the AWS server was so nice. Are you planning to do more DevOps streams and videos? Yeah, I definitely can. If you're interested, I can show you how I set up Nginx, because I definitely made a lot of changes to the Nginx setup after the stream. So if you throw a question on the Q&A site, we can get to that, and I'll do a rundown of what I had to do to get it working. Let's take a quick stretch. Also, YouTube should be a little bit lower latency. I was able to adjust the keyframe rate in OBS and set low latency on YouTube, and I'm not seeing any errors like I usually do. So let me know if YouTube is decent today. Yeah, welcome, Cananel. That's good. That's awesome. Yeah, I'll maybe try to tune in next time. I think you're based in the US, but for me, I was just working, so I couldn't tune in. Alas, you can't do that is asking, do I have a favorite hosting for my sites? It depends. So like now.sh is really great and really easy. So it's really great for static websites, and you can configure it to deploy Express apps as serverless functions, so it's great. However, if you want to use sockets, those don't work with serverless because serverless is like stateless. It spins up, it goes down. A socket server needs to be running all the time, and so for that, I'm using AWS, and that's where this API is deployed to, is on AWS Lightsail. So yeah. Have the opportunity to short? You mean shorten their name? What do you? Oh, to sort. Well, they don't. Users, I guess, really don't have control over it because it's on my screen. But yeah. Hey, no worries, Andrew. Thank you, Meeper. Welcome. Yeah, it's not a website. I think I might actually make it a website though, just so at any time. And that's another perk of being a member or a patron, is at any time people can go to the site and see everyone that supports me. Yeah, Netlify is good too. I don't really use it that much, but I have used it before. And it's pretty sweet. Yeah. No worries, Spacey Cat. Could I do an automated deployments to AWS with GitHub and GitLab? I've thought about that as well, because right now the deployment is pretty manual. So I have to push to GitHub, I'll SSH into the server, pull down the latest changes, and then restart the server. But I can set it up with like branches. So if I ever merge into the master branch, it'll automatically deploy. I can do all of my work on the develop branch. I could set that up. I found that after I started streaming sometimes, I've had like way more motivation to work on side projects and show peeps. Do you find the same thing? Yeah, I mean for me, and I guess being a content creator, it's all about finding content to create. And so it's definitely more motivation to work on things and build things as content. So yeah, content. Do I sound like a YouTuber? Can I use deployer to AWS on AWS? What do you mean? What is deployer a thing, or do you mean how to deploy to AWS? I would recommend checking out my 2 live streams ago. It was a pretty long one, but I basically gave an introduction to configuring a Linux server and hardening it and setting up Nginx, and that's the kind of things you would need to do if you're using something like AWS EC2 or Lightsail. Hello, Crit. Not much. We're just hanging out. And thanks for the follow. One more commit. One more commit. Content life, yeah. Wait, is that a bot? Deep Sense, did you create a bot? Pranjal says, I'm very excited for the upcoming year. I will start my first full-time job and planning to buy my first MacBook. Nice. Very cool. Congrats. Can you show real fast how to use an API and env if we plan to deploy that on GitHub in a simple static website? So for static websites, you can't really have secret environment variables. When you deploy a static website or when you build it, it's going to have those secret variables embedded inside of it. For a backend website, those will be hidden on the backend. So can you potentially clarify? Oh, Laravel deployer. I see. So with Node, which is what I mainly work with, there isn't really a package for deploying. It's kind of just put your code on a server somewhere that supports Node, and it'll run. Did I do anything since the last server setup? Yeah. So has anyone asked that question yet? Yeah, so this one. So I'll try to get to that before I end the stream. I'll show how I set up Nginx. I did it in a, I'll say, a better way, because when I set it up on stream, I had like if blocks inside of location. I looked that up. People said don't do that, and now I have it in a more scalable way where like each domain has its own separate config file, so I can show that. Yeah. Yeah. So ask that question on here, Crit, because I could also show. We just have like a simple Docker container. I'll put it on my Coding Garden server, and then I'll point a subdomain at it. That'd be cool too. All right. I need water. Hello, Weezu. Welcome. I'm gonna go grab some water. I'll be back in like 2 minutes, and then we'll start answering. Oh no! Before we answer questions, I want to show a member icon next to YouTube member names. Shouldn't take more than 20 minutes, right? Nah. It's probably going to take longer. All right, but I'll be back in 3 minutes. See you soon. Hello, friends. I'm back. Um, and hello, Glooscap. But yeah, Ed says famous last words. I always say it's not going to take that long, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't take that long. But we'll see. Hello, One Love. Happy holidays to you as well. Crit says, I'm using Ubuntu for the first time, and it's really overwhelming the amount of stuff that you need to learn. Yeah, I mean, it's basically learning a new operating system and all the things about it and how to configure it. Yeah. Tipsy is saying, so in Seedling School, we had to use a third-party API, so how do we do that with an env? I don't know if I'm asking this correctly. I don't know in my project. I just pasted a link directly in a variable because the API was just URL with no secret. But what if I wanted to use a secret API? So if you're just building the front end, you pretty much have to put that secret key in your front end code. If you want to hide it, you would need to create a backend server. Typically, you would call it, or it is, a proxy server, because basically your front end would make the request to your back end. Your back end would then use the secret token to make the request to the API. The API will respond to the back end, and the back end will respond to your front end. So the back end is like a thing in the middle. It is it's a proxy, and basically that would allow you to hide the secrets on the back end. If you want tips on that, if you go to coding.garden/videos and just search for proxy. In this video, I actually build this Coding Garden videos website because I build an API that talks to the YouTube API that hides my YouTube API token. If we look at the network traffic, we can see what API I'm hitting. It's this one. So this is a backend that I created, coding-garden-videos.now.sh. And this actually contacts the YouTube API, but the YouTube API requires an API key, and you definitely don't want to display that API key in the front end because that API key potentially has access to your YouTube account. So this front end makes a request to this back end. This back end makes a request to YouTube using that API key, and then gets the response, and then responds with the data from the YouTube API. So you can see in that video how I did that. If you're totally new to Node.js, it could be a little bit confusing. I do try to explain everything, and you basically could set it up in a similar way. You would just contact your API instead of the YouTube API. So there's that. Hello, Yash. Welcome. Conrad is saying, when you come to a dev conference in Europe, you have to tell us so we can meet up. That would be great. I've thought about that. Just like traveling the world, visiting Coding Garden friends. That would be fun. Do I know the geography of my views? I think YouTube sort of gives me that data. I created this guest map application a while back. Might take a second to spin up. But this is just an app where when someone loads it, it gets their location, and then they can add a message to the map. And this has dots all over the world. I mean, technically they could fake their location, but there are people all over the world. I could look at my YouTube stats to see like what countries have the most views. I haven't really done that though. Yeah, that'll do it. There we go. So yeah, there's dots all over this map. Oh, it's like really slow. Probably because there's so much data and so many dots. But if you click a dot, there's a message that somebody left for me. You can see some people are just like testing. But yeah, there's people all over the world. How to learn system design practically. Like, you're a senior software engineer, so do you deal with system design in your work? I do, yeah. So I mean, when I am starting a new project, I have to design that system, model the database, think about the type of traffic that the website is going to get, and what our deployment strategy is going to be, how we would potentially scale up or scale down depending on traffic. In my experience, it kind of just comes from experience, so having to do it and having to build systems and learning from that. But you can find books and resources on system design. But yeah, come to New York. Sure, yeah. I can do a tour of the US first. Hello, KK from Kenya. Welcome. Please come to India. React India, is that a conference? That would be interesting. I've always wanted to go to India. I've never been to India. That'd be fun. I know that India is either the #2 or #3 country that watches my videos. Surprisingly, the United States is still #1. It surprises me because there's, at least in the chat, the majority of people seem like they're not from the US. But yeah, that's a big thing, having an impact on the world. It's very interesting, right? I try not to think about it too much, but yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, Yeah, so I've my father was in the military, so I've lived in Guam, which is like a little island in the Pacific. I've lived in England. I've lived in Germany. And then I've lived in several states in the United States, and then traveled a lot in the U.S. When I was going to conferences and stuff at my old job. Cool. All right, here's what we're gonna do. On this website, we're gonna show an icon next to Cananello's name because he is a member. So let's do it. We need to go. That's a lot of golden coding garden folders. What's it called? Q&A. We need to go into the client. Cool. So this is where we will show member data. Nice. Yeah, so I checked a button. I messed with my frame rate, so that's pretty good. So I lived in Bamberg, Germany. There used to be an army base there. I think it closed since I had lived there. But I think that's like southeast Germany. It's fairly 20 minutes start countdown start. Yeah, let's start a timer. And I'll try not to get too distracted. But yeah, there's 3 YouTube members. But I think kind of know I mentioned your name because you're watching the stream right now and you have a question on the Q&A site. I don't think there are any other members that have questions. So you're going to be the test member. All right, you set a timer. Let's put this somewhere. Here? That's as small as it gets. That's fine. So if I do that, that's actually not bad. It'll be behind the chat. It's like there if we need it. Okay, so here's what we need to do. So in the Q&A client, I'm going to make a request to this endpoint. I mean, one thing I could do, and I'll probably do this in the future, I'm not going to do it today because it's a little more involved, is when a user is logging in with YouTube, I can hit this API and see if they are a member. But what I'm going to do for now is just grab the member data on the front end, which is totally fine. I control this backend. There's not really a way for people to like fake membership or anything like that. You have to have this particular YouTube ID. So for now, I'm going to do it on the client. In the future, it's probably much more scalable to do it when the user logs in. I could do an overlay. Should we spend time? No, let me code this. Though, someone remind me, and that would be a fun little coding project. And then we can use it more often. And maybe I'll stay more, or I'll get less distracted and try to like focus on coding the thing. All right, let's code the thing. So I think, do I have a file where I'm making API requests? I don't know if I do. So like the Q&A component, it's a bit of a mess. It makes requests to all of these different endpoints, and that's fine. So I think we'll do that. So we actually need to make a new Feathers client. Let's see. So we have this client.js. So, and the thing is that I now actually have 2 different Feathers backends. I have one backend, which is the Q&A website. And then I have the other backend, which is a Feathers app, but it has the members and the patrons endpoint. Let's create a new file, and let's call it API client. It's going to be very similar. The only thing is we're going to be connecting to a different backend. And I don't think I'm not going to put the API URL in a separate file. We're just going to say API URL is https://api.coding.garden. Like so. So we connect to it. And we don't need to configure authentication because this particular Feathers backend doesn't have auth. It just has open endpoints, which is totally fine. And yeah, so Discord sets my status if it sees that OBS is open. So that's a thing. Yeah. Okay, so we have this API client file. It's going to connect to our Coding Garden API, which has the YouTube members endpoint. So now that we have that, I'm just going to import it into this file, which is already connecting to the regular client, but we'll call this one API client. Technically, we could rename the other one like Q&A client, because that's really what it's talking to, but it's fine for now. And so we can see when the component mounts, we call the users service, the votes service, questions service to get all of the information about the Q&A site. But what we'll also do is create a property on our data that's like YouTube members by ID. Like that. And then we'll update it. So I'll say like this dot YouTube members by ID is going to be awaiting API client dot service. We're going to talk to the YouTube / members endpoint, and we're just going to do a find. And thanks for hanging out, Daniel. Have a good night. See you later. Okay, so we find it, and then we'll just reduce it by ID. No, we need to grab the users property. Users.reduce by ID gives us each user. We're going to be reducing to an object. On each iteration, we return by ID. And we'll say by ID at user.id equals user, like that. So in theory, this should give us all the YouTube members in an object. I can test at least this part locally. I can look at my my data in the View app, and I should see YouTube members by ID on my state. And then we can use that information to display an icon next to the user's name. So let's try it. Because I am running it locally, I don't have any members here. What broke? Oh, here we go. Oh, the backend isn't running. That's fine, though. Do I have the view? Yeah, let's look at the view dev tools. We can look at our app. We can look at the Q&A component. And we should see YouTube members by ID. And we do. So we have their ID, their name, their level, all that good stuff. Cool. So what we'll do is we're going to pass this into the messages component, so that way we can see if the given user of a message, or sorry, of a question, is a member. So let's just do this, because we have our questions, and we'll say, let's call it member data. We'll say YouTube members by ID at question.user.id. So the question has a user attached to it. They have an ID. And actually, it won't be. I don't think it'll be ID. Let's actually look on the Q&A website. I think I can use the View Dev Tools here. Let's see. Maybe not, because it was built. Yeah, it was built for production. Never mind. But we can look at the network to see the information we have about a user, because I believe it's not just going to be ID. It's going to be like provider ID or something like that. Yeah, it's going to be providers.youtube.id. Cool. So this gets a little bit trickier. Let's do this. We're going to create a function called get member data, and we'll pass in the question.user, like that. And then we'll have a method on the component called getMemberData. With the user. We'll say if user, I'm just gonna check that. It should be there. And user.provider and user.provider.youtube. So this has to do with how I'm setting up backend authentication, but basically the user information includes what they logged in with, because on this site you can log in with Twitch or Discord or Patreon. But if you logged in with YouTube, it'll say providers. User.providers and providers.youtube. And really, let's just return this. This dot members by ID at user.providers.youtube.id. So we see if they've logged in with YouTube, and that ID is in there, though it seems like it's not the right ID. Let's see. There's a Twitch login. This is like the user ID, not the channel ID. That's unfortunate. I thought this was going to be a lot easier. It may not be as easy as I thought. Because it looks like we have like the Google Plus ID rather than the YouTube channel ID. Yeah. Okay, let's see how hard it is to get that. Let's say YouTube profile ID get so Google profile ID get YouTube channel ID. Google Plus still haunts us from the grave. Yep. Find your YouTube user in channel IDs. Well, this isn't for the API though, but we'll see. Work with channel IDs. Let's look at the reference for the data API. Channels. List by YouTube username. List by channel ID. List by content owner. Okay, we're definitely not going to finish this in 8 minutes. Let me see if I missed anything in the chat. I don't have a private Twitter handle. Like, there is a Twitter account. I don't use it. Basically, I stick to not that one. Twitter. This is the Twitter account I use, and I really only tweet if I'm going live. I don't really share opinions or stuff like that on here. So yeah. React versus Angular versus Vue versus Next. Which one do you prefer and why? I prefer Vue, mainly because you can get things done without a lot of boilerplate. It's fairly simple for beginners to pick up. I can get things done just like very fast without having to bang my head against anything. I'm curious if you ever told your colleagues to watch your video if they asked you about any coding doubt. What do you mean? Like, people that I work with told them to watch my videos? Possibly. Yeah. Dan Abramov tweeted that he went blank if someone asked him tree or graph problems. Yeah, I mean, I probably would too. I don't know. Like, I understand the concept of like depth first search and breadth first search, but probably couldn't implement it without a little research. Hello, Iron Lada. Welcome. Welcome. It's your first time here. I live in a different city. Yeah, my parents live in a different state. I live in a house that I bought a few months ago here in Denver. And thanks for the follow, Iron Lotta. Oh, cool. Welcome, Silverlink. Yeah, it's okay to lurk here, but thanks for sending messages and saying hello. Harish says, after 5 to 6 days of learning something, I am losing enthusiasm about it. Kindly tell me a suggestion to stick to the Node.js learning path. Try to work on things that you're interested in. If you're just like blindly following tutorials or just watching and coding along with videos, that can get boring because you're potentially not interested in it. So pick something, pick a project, pick something that interests you, and try to use what you've learned so far to work on that project. And then when you come to something that you don't know how to do, research it so that you can apply it to the thing that you're trying to do and solve. People keep getting kicked off the top of the tree. It's pretty funny. There you go. Account suspended? Oh, that's not my account. I tried to ask them for that username, but they said they don't give up old usernames. But yeah, that's not me. Somehow somebody took that username. Yeah. High kick out ratio today for sure. Here comes Soupy Mike. I think he'll land on the tree, or they'll land on the tree. Maybe? Yeah, they're gonna. No. Okay. So here's the issue that we've come across. We have a user's Google Plus ID, and we need to get their YouTube channel ID, which is what's the word? Unfortunate? I don't know. I don't know. We'll need to do some Googling. The person that just asked about my mic, there should be a link that pops up soon. It has all the gear that I use. Okay. Google Plus ID to YouTube channel ID. Well, I want to do the reverse, but let's see what this Stack Overflow says. Google Plus user ID is now deprecated. Okay. You can get a Google Plus through the YouTube Data API. But this is the reverse. So you pass in the channel ID, and it will give you back the Google Plus ID. I mean, one thing I could do is on my back end here is anytime we get a new user, I'll request their their Google Plus ID and put it in this object here so that way we can reuse it. I think that's probably the way we'll need to go. That's unfortunate. Yeah. All right, let's look at this one. So this is channels, content details, channel ID. I feel this. I think this is deprecated now, though. They're not going to include the Google Plus ID. Comment resources, author Google Plus profile URL property has been deprecated. What am I supposed to do? Let's see if I can search. Can I search this site? Google Plus YouTube Data API. Yeah, there's a nice little candle on the tree. OAuth 2 for so it could be that on my back end when you log in with YouTube, or sorry, when you log in with Google, that's when I need to get the channel ID. Let's see. It could be that the data I get back from OAuth has their channel ID in it. We'll see. I don't know. Is that a short URL? What are you doing, Andrew? Okay, that's not helpful. Let's go to Google. Get channels from a Google ID. Now I'm interested. You're trying to. Why are you trying to rickroll me? We're working here. We're working here, Andrew. Okay. There isn't a way to get a channel from someone's Google ID. You can only get authorized users channel even when they sign simply by calling channels list. I see. So this will need to happen in the auth flow, in the auth call. So basically when I authorize someone on the back end, I will need to immediately call channels list with their auth token to get the list of channels. Okay, I'm not going to do that today. Let's just answer some questions. We know that we know what we need to do. So I'm going to do it at a later time and probably off stream. The main reason I don't want to do this kind of coding on stream is because I'm getting users Google auth tokens. And it's pretty tricky to not reveal those. Yeah, and it's not about being a .env file. It's like during the OAuth flow, if I'm like logging data, it could be displayed. I'm going to have to do this at a later time. So we did the research. We know what we need to do now. But for now, let's just answer questions. But I'm gonna put that on my list of things to do. All right. Google Plus was horrible for the user experience and terrible for the dev experience. So why is it a thing at all? I don't know if it's Google. It may not be Google Plus anymore. Like technically, it's the Google user ID because in my OAuth flow. So like if you go to the Q&A website, when you log in with Google, I get back a Google ID. I guess previously that was the Google Plus ID, but now it's just associated with your Google account. So maybe it's similar, and it used to be the Google Plus ID, but now it's just the Google ID. But as far as I can tell, I don't think there's an easy way to do it. All right. I'm gonna archive this question for now because we did answer it last time, Cananello. Or not last time, but a few times ago. But let's keep going. Yeah, let's keep going. Hello, CJ. This is Miku again. I changed the design of my whole website. Can you review it? I can try. Let's go there. So they actually asked a question a while back for me to review it, and we reviewed it. And let's see if they made changes. Oh. Didn't do that. Let me catch up before we do that. The Baby Yoda Rickroll video is clear. I haven't seen that. Baby Yoda Rickroll? I'm gonna keep the sound off though. A little bit of sound. Yeah, because I've seen that episode of The Mandalorian where he's like, he presses the button and then he turns it off and he presses the button. That's funny. See you later, Tanisk. Thanks for hanging out. And hello, Saktavel. And hello, Adrian from Kenya. Welcome. Hello, Rudro. Welcome. Hello, Neon. Welcome. Angeline says, can you review my website? Not without thinking it's a Rickroll first. Andrew says, how's it going? Let's see if I can get on the tree before I leave work. You can try. Or did you make it? Yeah, but you can try. I actually added a new command. Let's see if this works. I don't think it worked. Let's try it over here. Ha! It should only work for my user account, so nobody else should be able to clear the tree. All right. It's my tree. I can do what I want. All right, so Mikolaj wants a review. Let's take a look. I'm sorry. I never actually got to test it. I just implemented it, and apparently it works. Yep. Into the void, below the screen. Yeah, it shouldn't work for anyone else. Well, we'll have to wait for ornaments to land on the tree. It's okay. You can always drop again. Okay, so we're gonna review this website. I think, like, last time, I believe they had an English translation. I don't see an English translation, so that's okay. So, scrolling. This is interesting. I'm not a big fan of websites that like do scroll jacking. So right now I'm scrolling, and it is slowly animating to the next piece. What I don't like about that is you can end up in like halfway states like this. But it's probably fine, and I think it might work with the arrow keys, or if I click this. Yeah, that's cool. If I click that. Yeah, and so, I mean, and this is also why I don't like it, because it's like not, it's doing like a horizontal type scroll whenever we're doing a vertical scroll. I don't know, it's just my opinion. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but yeah. Other than that, I think it's nice and clean. I like the fact that you have a screenshot of your app right up in front. You have I guess a description. I don't speak Danish. Is this Danish? But I think that's the feedback we gave you last time was, I want to know what your app is before we start getting into it. Cool. Responsive. Works on all of these. Did someone else click that link? That's a Rickroll link for sure. You have your features, very good. Yeah, I think it's great. It's a nice, clean design, but the one thing I don't like about it is just a personal preference. It's I'm sure other people might be okay with this, but I don't really like the scroll jacking. If this was just like a vertical site with each section on one of their own, in their own section with a vertical scroll, it'd be great. But yeah, that's my review. Okay, Boyan asked this question a few days ago. Why the virtual DOM? Explain it like I'm 5, please. And Bob and Infi also voted for this as well. Can someone else try the clear command on YouTube? It shouldn't work. Okay. Those of you in the chat. All right, let's see. Does it work? I don't think it works. Cool. Hello, Manusfall. Welcome. Those of you in the chat who is interested in seeing a code example of this particular question, or should I just hand wave explain it? Should I skip this question? Let me know in the chat right now. And John says, hello, John. I added Axios post request on my front end in a component, did mount, and handle submit. How then do I get the user input from React in Express and save it to a MongoDB and see it in the MongoDB? So there are multiple things going on here. Basically, your front end will make a post request to your back end. Your back end will then insert it into the database. Now on the front end, you have to handle the form state with React. So on the front end, React will keep track of the state of the form, like what the user has entered, basically the data that you're going to send to the backend to be put into the database. So that all works there. And then when submit happens, you make a post request to your backend. That's the general concept. We'll see. Whatever floats your boat, go for it with code. Let's code it. Do it. Show us why. All right, we'll do it. 20 minutes or less with code. I think this is cool. This is like potentially, what's the word? I could edit this as a separate video. Let me do this really quick though. I'm gonna try to add a timer overlay. Where did it go? Did I type the website name wrong? I'm gonna hide the drop game for sure. Oh, it's HTTP, that's why. Okay. Interact. 20 minutes. Start countdown. There we go. That's not bad. How's that? Yeah, it's subtle. Cool. All right. So this question comes from Boyan, who asks, why the virtual DOM? Explain it like I'm 5, please. All right, let's do it. So before I can begin to explain it, we're going to start with a basic code example. Let's go to dev, coding garden. Do I have a Q&A? Let's make a directory examples. Okay, and then we're going to make a directory why the VDOM. Okay, we'll open it up here, and first we're going to do things without the virtual DOM. So we're going to create a basic file, index.html. We'll create a basic HTML file. We'll say why the VDOM. Cool. And as a quick example, let's just do this. We are going to, we'll hit my endpoint that lists all the members of my YouTube channel, and we're going to list them on the page. But we're going to use vanilla JavaScript, and we're going to be modifying the inner HTML. So let's see it happen. So let's just have like a, we'll have a div, and we'll just say ID equals members. Cool. We'll add some JavaScript here. Script. We'll call it no vdom.js. And then we'll create a new file, no vdom.js. And we need to hit my backend endpoint. So I have this API here, which lists members. We're just going to make a request here. We'll have this array of members, and we'll show all of their names on the page. Should be simple. So we're just going to say fetch that URL. And then we get the response, and we'll say response.json. And actually, we're working in Chrome here, and I think we have access to top level await. So let's just do this. We'll say response equals await fetch. And I'll mention right now, this has nothing to do with the virtual DOM. When we get to the virtual DOM part, I'll mention that, but there's some setup that we need to do. So here we'll have, let's call it result. Let's call it JSON. And this is going to be awaiting response.json. And then we'll just log the JSON. Cool. So index.html brings in that file. That file makes a request to that API and then logs it in the console. So let's just start up a basic static file server. We'll look at the DevTools. Await is only valid in an async function. I thought we had top level await. Oh well, we'll put it in a function. Get members. And that's going to do this code here. We'll make it async. And then when the page loads, we'll call get members. All right, we have an array. It has the users. Great. So we've made the API request. Now let's iterate over that users array and add them to the page. I'm pretty sure I've like used it. Maybe it's right now it's only supported in the DevTools, because I'm pretty sure I can just put a top level await right here. I don't know. Regardless, let's take a quick stretch. Yeah, technically we could have put it in an iffy, but that's not the point of what we're talking about. So let's just say get members returns json.users. And then when we get back the result, we'll say add members to page. And we'll create a function, add members to page. that takes in the members. Let's say we iterate over all of the members and add them to the page. So we're going to add them directly to this this section here. So let's create a variable. We'll call it the members element. This is going to be document.querySelector. I'm going to grab the element with the ID members, and that's where we're going to append our results. So Axios is one way of contacting an API, but you have to install that library. Fetch is built into the browser, so we don't have to install anything extra. And by install, I mean you could add like a CDN link to Axios if you wanted to use that. Okay, so members is an array. Let's just say members.forEach. We'll say member. And what we're going to do, and this is where the virtual DOM comes into play, is we're just going to append some HTML to the members element. So I'm going to say members element dot inner HTML plus equals. So basically, for every member, we'll create a div, and we're going to append that HTML there. So let's just have a div. We'll have like a p tag inside of that, and we'll say we'll put the member. John with a super chat. Thank you so much, John. Do I use router.post to save it to the DB? Please help. We'll try to talk about that when I get to that question. But thank you so much for the super chat. Okay, so here we can say member.name, and it should show their names. So we see the page. When it loads, we now have all three member names. Okay, so the setup is done. Now we can talk about the virtual DOM. But just real quick, let's add some basic styles because it's kind of ugly. Here we go. So we have their names. Beautiful. But let's say for some reason I want to check for if there are any new members, and like every 5 seconds I'm going to request that API and then update my page with the latest members if I've gotten any new members. So we can look at the elements and we can see this happening here. And let's do that. So basically just this part right here, get the members and then add them to the page. I'm going to call that over and over again, like let's say every 2 seconds. And one thing I'll do is before I add them to the page, I'm going to empty out the HTML. So that way we only ever see the latest members. The timer is because I'm going to try to be done with this code example when that timer is up. Okay, so we'll say get members, add members to page, and let's just do a set interval on this. Now, let it be known, I actually have a socket endpoint set up here. We wouldn't need to do a set interval, but what I'm going to demonstrate is the fact that we're going to call this function, which updates the HTML manually every single time, and that's where the virtual DOM comes into play. So let's just do a set interval, which is going to call this function to do this, get members, add them to the page, and we're going to do that every second. And let's just log adding members, or say getting latest members. Dot, dot, dot. Okay. So if we look at the console, but will this work in IE? Probably. But if we look at the console, so every second I'm calling that function, get latest members, get latest members. And if we look at the DOM, we can see that, so like if I expand this, every single time we see that it's manually updating the HTML here. So like I'm looking at it, and then that element disappears because I'm actually totally resetting it. And I'll say this, ignore set interval, ignore the fetch. The thing that we care about right here is the fact that we're setting inner HTML. So every second we're iterating over that array and updating the HTML, but we're not taking into account if that HTML was already, if it even needed to be updated. We're just updating it every time no matter what. So like I said, ignore the fetch, ignore the set interval. The fact that this is clearing the HTML and then updating the HTML every time, even though if we look at the page, the content is never changing, right? It's always the same. However, the JavaScript is updating it every single time. So this is where the virtual DOM is coming into play. Basically, the virtual DOM allows us to update the DOM in a smart way. So instead of resetting all of the HTML every single time, the virtual DOM is a mechanism for looking to see what's already in the DOM, looking to see what we're going to change it to, and then only performing the updates that need to happen. And in this scenario, we actually don't need to make any updates at all. So if we were using a virtual DOM, basically we would see nothing happening in the DOM inspector here, because the virtual DOM reconciliation algorithm would basically say, oh, well, everything's the same. I don't need to update the DOM. So let's use a virtual DOM implementation. Now, if you've ever used React, that's typically where people think of the virtual DOM is with React, but the virtual DOM itself is really just a concept. React was one of the first libraries to use it, but Vue.js also uses a virtual DOM implementation, and there are libraries out there which you can use just standalone as a virtual DOM. And let's find one now. Virtual DOM library? Redom, Snapdom, Maquette. Apparently there's a lot. Let's see what, like, these are the ones that were the top results whenever I searched on DuckDuckGo. A tiny 2 kilobyte turbo boosted JavaScript library for creating user interfaces. Let's see. Yeah, I don't want to do that. I literally just want a function that will, I can pass it some HTML. So SnapBDOM is a virtual DOM library with a focus on simplicity, modularity, powerful features, and performance. Let's see how it can work. We require it. We create the virtual DOM thingy. I don't like it. Does anybody have any suggestions? Has anybody heard of a virtual DOM library that's just like standalone? Let's see. I think this could work. This actually looks okay. Yeah, this could work. Let's look at the documentation. Yeah, most of the time they're built into a framework. This Maquette, let's look at it on GitHub to see if it's new and relevant. So it was last updated in July. It has 684 stars. Decent enough. Letting me know. There are probably other ones out there, but another thing you can take away from this is virtual DOM itself is just a concept, and then there are various implementations in various libraries. So here's Petite DOM, a minimalist virtual DOM library. Last updated in October. We can bring in render. What if we don't want to use JSX? It's fine. We're gonna use this Maquette thing. I think we should be good. At least what I saw in their example. So let's download. Here we can just add it as a CDN. That's great. So in my code right here, I'm gonna add the Maquette or Maquette. How should I say that? Maquette? Maquette? We're gonna add it as a dependency, and now I can use it. So if we saw on the home page that it gives us access to this function called h. In React, that function is called react.createElement, and typically JSX is what you use instead of react.createElement. But let's try it. Let's try doing this. So basically what we'll do is instead of manually creating the HTML, and so now let's make a copy of this. Let's call it with VDOM. So and then in our HTML, we'll comment that out, and we'll bring in with VDOM instead. So now we can use that h function, and the h function is like a create element. So first you pass in the element that you want, and then you can pass in nested elements. And then when we do append, we append the render function. So here's what we're gonna do. Instead of appending to the inner HTML, we're just gonna do this. For one, let's just copy that stuff we got from their docs. We're gonna try to mimic it. So basically, we need to create a div, and then it has a child, which is a p tag. So let's say member render is going to be, we'll say h, we want to create a div, and then it needs to have a child, which is a p tag, so we'll say h with a p tag, and then the contents of that is just member.name. So this is that same HTML representation, this here, but using this virtual DOM library like that. And then we can probably say members element dot append, and we're gonna pass in the DOM node and a render function. That's interesting. So the thing is, I gotta figure out how to use this library. We'll pass in the render, and potentially we need to create an element. Let's say div is document.createElement. And let's try that. And for now, we're not going to set an interval. Let's just see if we can get it working on the page. Let's see. So, page loads. We have errors in the console. Let's clear it. Create element on document, 1 argument required, but only 0 present. Oh, I need to tell it to be a div, I guess. H is not defined. Well, let's start the tutorial. Lit HTML, we could try that. Okay, so make sure the DOM matches the following markup. Div class landscape. I need to create the projector. Yes. Oh, okay. So we need to create a projector. I see. Here we go. We're gonna make it in 20 minutes. It's gonna be great. And okay, so that's good to see because those two variables were there as well. So let's do this. So we create our h, which comes from maquette.h, and we create our projector. And so we'll say projector.append. I want to append it to the members element, and I'll pass in the render function. See what happens. H called with invalid arguments. Oh, I see. So we need to put this there. I see. I think I get it. It's going to be a little bit trickier because we need to actually set up the HTML ahead of time. And then we'll update them accordingly. Or do I? I think it actually just wants us to, because it's a tutorial, so it wants us to do like h with div.saucer. Greetings. Do we need to pass it an array? Because that's the children? Yeah. Okay. So we actually need to pass this member name in an array. Render function is not a function. Ah, okay. So this actually needs to be a function that returns it. There we go. So it's showing up on the page. We got it. We got it. So I think what will happen though, we need to configure this so that whenever we get the latest members, we're essentially just recalling that member render function. I believe if we do the same set interval thing, it's just gonna keep appending more and more to the page. Yeah, so they just keep getting appended to the page. We don't want that. So similar to the way we did it with no virtual DOM, we're not really going to clear out the HTML. We're really just going to figure out a way to how do I quiet it? Be quiet. Stop it. Come on. I didn't think this would happen. It was the timer. That's fine. We're gonna set another 8 minutes on the clock, and we'll get going from there. That was the timer that I had set. Okay. Cheater. I mean, we had to figure out how this library actually works. So let's see. Let's keep going through their tutorial. How it works. We need a way of recalling that function is the thing. Because we really only want to append them once. Let me see if projector. What are the functions we have available to us on projector? Let's go to the docs. Documentation. API documentation. Projector. It has append, detach, insert before, merge. Merge might be what we want. So merge is a new DOM node using the result from the provided render function with an existing DOM node. Okay. Insert before, detach, append, replace. Replaces an existing DOM node with the result from the provided render function. The render function will be invoked again to update the DOM when needed. The DOM node to replace. I think replaces might be what we want. And when we do projector.append, does it return an element? No, returns void. So append appends a new child to the DOM using the result from the provided render function. The render function will be evoked again to update the DOM when needed. Okay, how do we tell it to update though? We're going to figure this out. And ultimately, it's just figuring out this virtual DOM library. What I'll say is, at the end of the day, what matters is the fact that instead of replacing the HTML every time, the virtual DOM will be smart about how it updates things. And what we should see once we get this once we get this working is that basically no renders will need to happen at all because the data isn't changing. That's what we're trying to show. Yeah, let's look at schedule render. Instructs the projector to re-render to the DOM at the next animation frame using the registered render functions. Okay. I see. So we basically would need a way for it to get the data. And we would store... Okay. I think this could work. Schedule render. Because what we could do is, because this gets access to the member, we could, when we get back the data from the response, put it in an object like by ID. Let's do this. So instead of just returning the array of users, let's return an object with the user ID as the key and the users as the value. Because that way we can look up the users and we'll just be updating that every time. I think that's what we'll do. So let's just reduce it by ID. We'll say by ID at user.id. And actually, let's do this. I have a better idea. So instead of reducing it, we're just going to have a global variable that just says users by ID. And on every time we get the members, we're just going to update this object. So instead of like recreating these render functions, we basically just update the object. I think that's the best way to go. So we'll just say for each member, for each user, users by ID at user.id equals user. Cool. And this will update the information in the object. So that should be great. So we'll do that. And then this doesn't actually get access to the members. This will just do something like, if it's the first render, it's going to add them to the page. So we'll do something like this. So first, get the members, add members to page, then update members. And update members is going to be the thing that repeatedly calls the API. This is what we'll do. Function update members. And we should just be able to say projector dot schedule render. So we would do something like get the latest members. Get the latest members, schedule a render, and then in 1 second, call itself so it keeps doing it. So we'll say set timeout, 1 second, update members. But now we need to adjust how add members to page works. Really what we need to do is we'll say object.values for users by ID. So we're going to get all the values of the object. And we're going to create these user functions. And instead of doing member.name, we'll say users by ID at user.id.name. So every time, it's going to reach into that object and grab the latest username. I think this is the way to go. And then we'll log in here. Getting latest members. Like that. This is the winner. Object.values, not dot then, dot for each. And I messed this up. For each user. And then this code goes in there. We have 39 seconds. I think we can do it. I definitely think we can do it. There's that. There we go. Getting latest members, getting latest members. And now, if we look at the elements, this is the thing to note, right? Because the data is not changing, we're not seeing any DOM updates, right? Because basically what happens when we say schedule render, it's going to go through and it's going to call this render function, but it's going to see that nothing has changed. It's going to see that the name is still exactly the same for that user. Doesn't need to update the DOM. All right. So we've got it. So this is answering the question, why the virtual DOM? Explain it like I'm 5. So it took us a while to get the code working. It took us 28 minutes, but basically, let's take a step back and understand why. First, let's look at it again with no virtual DOM. And basically what we're doing with no virtual DOM is every 1 second, we're getting all the members from the API and we're updating the HTML. So, and what we're doing is we're clearing out the HTML and setting the latest HTML. And so this is potentially expensive. Now, this is a very simple example. Now, if we we're seeing that this is the code that's actually updating the DOM. We can see the DOM is flashing. So if you ever look in the element inspector and you see it flashing, that means that some sort of update is occurring. And basically, because every 1 second we're wiping out the HTML and setting the latest HTML, that could potentially be really expensive. Now, this is only 3 elements, so it's not that bad. You can't really tell the difference. But in larger applications and with more data, you definitely wouldn't want to do this, because updating the DOM this frequently could potentially slow your app down, and it's not that performant. So a better way is to use something like the virtual DOM. And so basically what's happening behind the scenes, so we'll do it with the virtual DOM now. And basically, we had to change our code a little bit. So instead of wiping out the HTML every time, the first time we get the members, we create a render function for all of the members. So each member is a div that has a paragraph inside of it, and it has that user's name. And so on the first time we get the members, we create these render functions. And then every time after that we get the members, we just schedule a re-render. And the re-render is actually going to call this render function, and we can see it happen. Let's do this. We're going to return that. And we'll log this. Checking render for, and we'll pass in that name. So what we should see is every second, it's going to check the render for every single one of these elements. But because of the virtual DOM, it's going to see, oh, it's still a div, it's still a p tag, and the name hasn't changed. So there's no updates that actually need to happen in the DOM. So if we look at the console, we see Andrew Rogers has become a member. And so if you give it a second, he should actually pop up. Oh, no, actually it won't, because of the way I wrote the code. I need to fix the code. But because the issue is, I now also need to do a check. When we get the latest members, if we don't have a render function for that member, we need to add it to the page. That's one thing that I'm not doing. And I've basically broken it. And thank you so much, Andrew Rogers, for becoming a member. But you can see, basically every second, it checks the render function for all 3 of these elements. And because the name has not changed yet, and let's look at the DOM, you'll see that the DOM isn't flashing. Everything stays exactly the same. Because the DOM itself didn't need to change based on the data that we got back. So that's why we use the virtual DOM. Again, I use this library called Maquette. React has its own virtual DOM implementation. Vue.js has their own virtual DOM implementation. But essentially, that's what's happening. We set up the page initially, and then every render after that will determine if we need to update the DOM. Now, I guess one thing I could have done is created a virtual DOM element that does the map. That's probably a better way to do it. Yeah, and Shadow DOM is actually not at all related to the virtual DOM. So Shadow DOM is all about web components and creating sub-DOM trees that aren't affected by the DOM outside of it. Completely and totally unrelated to the virtual DOM, which itself is just a concept. The Shadow DOM is actually an implementation in the W3C spec. Let's see. Yeah, we're not seeing the latest member. That's unfortunate. That's just mean it's an issue with my API. Oh well, we'll get it soon. And thank you. Who was it? Was it Andrew? Let me see. Oh wait. They got replaced. Is Cananello no longer a member? Andrew is in here and Cananello isn't in there anymore. Weird. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know. I talked about that for a long time. Can I get some thumbs up or some thumbs down in the chat? Was this I don't think I have a hard-coded array length. I am doing like a for each, but was this helpful? Does it shed a little bit of light on the virtual DOM? Does it not? And I'll reiterate. this is specific to Maquette, but under the hood, React is doing similar things. Under the hood, Vue is doing similar things. Is Cananello the new Andrew? Oh, is that the case? Did you change your name, Cananello? No, it's Andrew Rogers. It's different. Yeah, because they have a different created at date. Oh well, I need to work on my API. That thing is wrong. All right, we got some thumbs up. Cool. I will say though, one thing we would need to do is say, actually, we could do this. Let's do this. When we add the members to the page, we get the users. So users.forEach. If they, and basically what we'll do is we'll say if they don't have a DOM element yet, we'll need to add them to the page. So we'll say if we haven't seen this user before, then we set them, and then we do this stuff. This should do it. So now, every time we get a new array of members, we iterate over them, and any of them that we haven't seen before, if we haven't seen them, we create a new element. Yeah, I'm way over time. I am way over time. Hello, Ben. Welcome. I don't think I hard-coded 3. Because we get the members, we iterate. Let me just check really quick. Let me make sure. I can look in my look at all those drops. I can look in my YouTube dashboard to see if you're still at least listed as a member there, and then I know it's an issue with my API. I think it's an issue with my API because you're still listed as a member, Canada. Cool. I'll have to work that out later. All right. Well, that's the virtual DOM. It's a little roundabout, but we eventually got there. Yeah, I'm going to go to work in about 12 minutes. Let's see if we can answer a few more questions before I go. So Kamalesh asked the question, how to CRUD operations in Feathers using Feathers Vuex. I'm really doing this for a week. Can you help me out? Yeah, Feathers Vuex, I would just look at their documentation because they have a lot of examples. I mean, one of the things you'll notice about Feathers Vuex is that it uses models. So let's look at their docs. Yeah. Yeah, you're still a member, Cananello, no worries. So Steven says, so what's the virtual DOM? The virtual DOM is a concept, and it basically is an algorithm that will update the DOM in a smart way. So we create a virtual representation of the DOM, and when an update needs to happen, we'll check to see if things have changed, and if they have, we'll update those things in a smart way, rather than wiping out the HTML and resetting it every single time. So in a nutshell, that's the virtual DOM. Cool, but if you check out Feathers Vuex, and even look at this, so how to create your own virtual DOM, you would need to parse HTML, and I mean, basically we would just implement this H function, right? So this H function, under the hood, it's doing like document.create element, and then it's doing checks on like text content, doing checks on CSS class properties, doing checks on attributes. If any of those things change, it will uniquely update those individual things. So that's how you would implement the virtual DOM. I think for a future stream, it would be really great to try and implement the virtual DOM from scratch, but that's for a later time. Okay. Messages.view. Web components are pretty unrelated to the virtual DOM. Like technically, you could implement the virtual DOM with your web components, but web components are just a specification that's been added to the browser that allows you to create custom components that work in the browser. Are virtual DOM operations expensive? So Svelte surgically updates the DOM. So in the grand scheme of things, they're not that expensive when you compare it to wiping out the HTML and then totally resetting the HTML. So iterating over your new DOM versus your old DOM is much more performant than just wiping out the DOM and resetting the DOM. That's why something like the virtual DOM was added. Svelte is different because it will individually just like set the text content or set an attribute, and it doesn't do any virtual DOM diffing. It just knows exactly where in the DOM things have changed, and it just immediately updates that piece in the DOM. That's a lot faster because you don't have to iterate over the two DOMs to compare them, or the two virtual DOM representations to compare them. So that's why Svelte it does surgical replacements and is a bit faster. Cool. I'm trying to find an example for you, Kamalesh. But I mean, basically, it should just work. So you'll definitely want to set up your data models. Once you have those models, you'll get access to things like .save, .delete, .find. I mean, all of it is in there. Surgically means just like individually, like it's going in with like in a very precise way and updating that one specific thing. Whereas with the virtual DOM, it's going to look at the old representation of the virtual DOM, it's going to look at the latest representation of the virtual DOM, and it's going to compare the two. And we could even see it even more. So we could do like this. Let's say result will be that, then we'll return result. We can log that result, and we're going to see what the virtual DOM looks like. The virtual DOM is just a JavaScript object. Let's look at it. Yeah, look at it. So if we look at one of these, we see that the virtual DOM here says it's a div. The DOM node is a div. It has no text. The children is an array. It's a p tag. And the text is Hippo Viva. So this is the virtual DOM tree. This is an object. And then when we do a render again, we have the old object and the new object, and we compare all of its properties. And if anything has changed, we individually update those things. So that's it. Virtual DOM is just an object. And virtual DOM updates are just object diffing. Kamalesh, I will point you to my Feathers Vuex Trello clone video. Because in that, I use Feathers Vuex. I'm not using the latest version of Feathers Vuex, but I'll show you. It shows you exactly how I use Feathers Vuex to do CRUD. Basically, create new tables, or create boards, create lists, create cards. So that video could help you. And I don't really have the time right now to show an example, but yeah, check it out. And I think before I go, I do want to show my Nginx configuration because we had mentioned that earlier. Let's see what Diego is asking. I'm in the process of trying to create a radar effect with Mapbox. Any ideas on how to re-update the layer source values without changing so much memory, or any other implementation ideas? I've never done anything like that, so I'd have to look into it. We'll save your question for a later day. I don't think I'm going to be able to talk about the this keyword. How to structure the object in action creators in Redux? It depends. Talking about date manipulation. Yeah, let's talk about this one. And which is a similar question that Conrad asked. And then I have to go. And we'll answer more questions at a later time. I spent way too long on the virtual DOM. Just trying to get that library working. Let's hide that. Cool. So Crit is asking, did you do anything since your last server setup? I would like to know how you did Nginx alongside with Docker and Node. So I'm actually not using Docker, but I'll show you my Nginx setup. So this particular API that I've been working with this stream, the YouTube members and the Patreon pledges. Oh, I know exactly why the backend is broken. And actually, I'll show you how I would update this thing. So right now, my YouTube members API is broken. We're only seeing 3 users. But the issue with that is how I'm actually querying it. So the API here is the code for my API. I'm going to hide my screen for a second just to make sure I don't show anything. There's those drops again. Anything too special. Yeah, here we go. So on my backend for getting the members, the page size is literally 3. And this is backend piece. If I set that to 100, maybe I'll be able to get the latest 100 members. Let's see. And if this works, I'm going to deploy it to that server, and I'll show you how the deploy works. So localhost 9000/YouTube/members. There we go. So and we're now listing everyone, including Cananello. Sorry that you were left out for a bit, Cananello. And that was the issue, mainly because those params came from looking at the undocumented API. I didn't really know what it was for, but now I know what it's for. Cool. So I made a change. I want to deploy it to my server that's deployed to AWS using Nginx and all that good stuff. We want the drop game. I'll enable the drop game. So I made a change. I'm going to add it, commit it, push it to GitHub. Do that, push it up. So this is pushing up to a GitHub repo. And so what I'll do is I'm going to log into that remote server, pull down the latest changes, and then restart that process. So if we look at the deployed server, it's still only showing 3 users because my backend code is broken. But let's go into my, my server. So I'm going to SSH into api.coding.garden. In the home folder here, I have different folders for different applications that I have deployed. And specifically, the API one is the API that we're looking at. And if I do git pull origin master, we'll get the latest changes that I just pushed up. And now I need to restart that service. So even though I have the latest changes, we're still just seeing three things. I'm using a tool called PM2. So if I do PM2 list, we can see all of the processes that I have running. And we can see that I have this process called API. I can do PM2 logs. That'll show me all the logs for that specific endpoint. It looks like other people are hitting that endpoint. Oh no, not other people. So I still have my app running that's calling it every second. So that's why those logs are happening. That's this. So if I close this tab, we should stop seeing those requests. Yeah, so it's great. But I now want to pull in the latest changes or restart the service. So PM2 has a command for that. So when I did list, API has the ID of 6. So if I do PM2 restart 6 -- I don't need update env in this case, but if I were to change things in the environment variables, I'd have to include that flag. But if I do that, it's going to restart the service. And now my backend has the latest code. Oh, you can't see the bottom of the terminal. Sorry. You can see the commands that I ran there. So basically, PM2 list, and then PM2 restart 6. So that restarted it, and now is taking in the latest code, and we can see that Cananello is listed on there as well now. So that's great. So that's PM2. PM2 is for managing all these different processes. And like I mentioned, in this home folder is where I have all of my applications. So I have this folder, coding.garden. This is just a static website. And when you go to coding.garden, it's actually serving the files that are in that folder. I also have this folder, Q&A. And this has a client folder. And the client has a dist folder. And when you go to Q&A.coding.garden, it's serving the files that are in this folder. If I get more than 100 members, then I need to update the endpoint. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So basically, my home folder has all of the different things that I have deployed there. And so any site you go to that's coding.garden is now deployed on this server. So if you go to Q&A.coding.garden, it's actually serving up that static site. So let me show you how I have that set up with Nginx. So if we go to etc/nginx/sites available, I now have a configuration file for each of the different things that I have, challenge accepted, for each of the different things that I have deployed on this server. Each of these is an Nginx config. If we look at the default config, you can see I just have basic setup. So first I'm bringing in my my SSL certificates that got created with Let's Encrypt, and then I just have a basic server listening on port 80. And if any request comes in on port 80, I redirect it to HTTPS because I don't want any port 80 traffic coming into my server. So this is the default config. And the way Nginx works is it actually reads in all of these configuration files. It actually reads them in from a folder called sites enabled. Those are all links to the file. So if I list them here, you can see that they're actually pointing to the file in sites available. So if I were to remove a file from this folder sites enabled, I still have the configuration saved in sites available, but then that domain would no longer work, or that configuration wouldn't work anymore. So let's go back into sites available, and let's look at api.coding.garden. So this is the configuration that handles traffic to this server, api.coding.garden. And we can see it's pretty simple. So I'm saying listen on port 443 with SSL. The server name is api.coding.garden. So this is how I'm able to have different services running on this server. They all have different subdomains. And this is basically saying when a request comes in on the subdomain api.coding.garden, I'm going to proxy that request to port 8000. And so if I look at the logs for the API, we can see that it's listening on port 8000. So there's multiple level here. PM2 is managing all of my node processes and keeps them up and running, and they're all running on different ports. And then each app that's running on a different port has a separate configuration. So again, if we look at that, it's running on port 8000. One thing I'll mention really quick, I had to add these extra values here to allow WebSocket connections because it needs to upgrade the connection. So this is all I needed to do to enable secure WebSockets. Cool. So that's API. If we look at Q&A API, we can see that it's running on port 9000, and it has the subdomain Q&A-api.coding.garden. And when you go to the Q&A website, it's actually communicating with that backend Q&A.coding.garden. And again, this is just proxying those requests to port 9000. Now, these other things are all just static websites. And for a static website, I'm just using Nginx to serve up those static files. So if we look at the configuration for coding.garden, we can see that when you go to coding.garden, I'm just serving the files that are in this folder. So I'm looking in the public folder of the Coding Garden website, and that just serves up those files statically. If you go to anything.coding.garden, I just serve up a landing page. So if you go to whatever.coding.garden, that configuration will just show you that. And that's because I have the wildcard right there. And then similarly, if we look at Q&A, which is the static website, that one is just serving up statically the files that are in the dist folder of the Q&A client. So basically, I have a lot of different services running. Some of them are, yeah, that will work. Andrew.coding.garden. And I'll just create a custom config really quick just to show you how that would work. And yeah, let's do it. So in sites available, let's copy our, I'm actually going to copy the, yeah, let's copy the Q&A. Thing, and I'm going to put it in andrew.coding.garden. Oh, I have to do it with sudo. And so here I'll set the server name, and this is how Nginx knows to route the different requests. So if I do andrew.coding.garden, I'm going to set the root. Actually, I'm not going to set the root at all. I'm just going to redirect to the Rickroll video. So let's do, well, for now, well, it's fine. I'm going to leave that because I actually want to, I'm going to look at my configuration that does the redirect. I want to do this, return 301, and we're gonna redirect to the Rickroll video. So let's do nano. No, anybody that goes to it will get Rickrolled. Andrew.coding.garden. We'll disable all of this stuff, and we're just gonna return a 301 redirect. To the Rickroll video. So let's find it. Gonna mute it. Oh no, we'll do the Baby Yoda Rickroll. Cool. So we'll do this. When you go to andrew.coding.garden, we're gonna do a 301 redirect to that URL. Cool. So right now it won't work because I need to restart. So if you request this page, you're still going to get andrew.coding.garden. To make it actually work, I need to move this file from sites available to sites enabled. So I'll do a link of andrew.coding.garden from the sites available folder to the sites enabled folder. And by putting it in that folder, that's the folder that the Nginx config will look at. So we put it in there. We need to do it with sudo. And it still won't work because we need to restart Nginx. So I'll do sudo nginx-s reload. There's a small error. That's fine. But now if I refresh this, we get redirected to that. So if you go to andrew.coding.garden, you get redirected there. Jorge is mentioning, make it so username.coding.garden shows an image of their support tier. We could potentially do that. We would need a custom node.js server running on that given, running on anything star, and then we'd look at the subdomain and see if they're a member. It'd be a little bit trickier. We couldn't do it just with Nginx because we'd need to hit some APIs and stuff like that. I missed some follows and stuff. Let me just catch up. Thanks for the follow, Silvano. Welcome. Yeah, Steven is saying, my Nginx folder only has a default conf file. Well, you should see all of this stuff, potentially. It depends on what kind of server you installed it on, but if you look at nginx.conf, it says down at the bottom to include anything in sites enabled. Right here. So this is like the main configuration, and then this line right here is the one that reads in all of those configuration files that are in the sites enabled folder. So if yours isn't set up this way, you potentially could set it up this way. Yeah. Redirect Rick, yeah. And thanks for the follow, Alsmart. Welcome. Yeah, and so I'll show deploying a Docker container really quick. So for one, you would need a Docker container. What's the Docker hello world? Docker node.js hello world? Can I just get like a basic API endpoint? Curl the port, and it should print hello world. Curl. Cool. So, well, I just need to get a Docker container is the thing. I could create a Docker container, but I'm just trying to find like a basic one that I can just pull down. Init it. Yeah, I don't want to do all that. Well, I'm gonna like pull an existing container that just has an endpoint inside of it. Does anyone know of a container I can just pull down? I mean, technically I could do this. I could have just like a basic. I gotta go to work, but let's spend 10 minutes doing this. Let's do it. We're gonna make a directory. We're gonna call it hello Docker. I'm gonna go into hello Docker, npm init it, because it's gonna be a node.js app. I think it'd be fun. I'm curious if this has an endpoint though. Subscribe to Alka, right? Or Instafluff. One of the two. I think this just console logs hello world. It doesn't actually give us a server doing it. So let's install Express. I think that's all we need. Let's work on index.js. That will just be a basic Express app like this. Not even going to change it. Instead of listening on 3000, let's listen on 7000 because I want it to be a port that's not being used. Well, actually, it wouldn't matter because this is inside the container. But regardless, we're going to listen on 7000. Cool. Let's open our package.json and set a start script. So the start script is just going to be node index.js. Yep. And if I start it, it's listening on port 7000. But now I want to put that inside of a Docker container. So we'll use their Docker container here, which pulls node argon, makes a directory, copies the package JSON, does an npm install, and then exposes port 8080. So we're going to expose port 7000, but let's nano a Docker file. The only thing we're going to change here is that it's listening on port 7000. So it's a basic Docker file that pulls the node image, copies my package JSON, does an npm install, and then copies all the files for the app itself into the node into the Docker container. Cool. So we have a Docker file. That's great. And now we're gonna build it. I think -t gives it a name, so we'll say docker build period, which is the current directory, and we're gonna name it hello Docker. So it needs to pull down the node image. It should be pretty fast. It'll then copy the package JSON, install the dependencies. But honestly, it all comes down to once we have this Docker container running, it's going to be listening on port 7000. So then we just need to create an Nginx configuration that redirects any or proxies any requests to a certain domain to the port that this Docker container is running on. Cool. So we built the Docker container. Now we want to run it. And we'll use this command. So we built the container. We're going to run it. We're going to expose port 7000. So what this does is it takes port 7000 that's running inside of the container and exposes it as port 7000 running on this machine that I'm on right here. This is going to run it interactively. I don't want to do that. Because we're going to see the output. I'm just going to run it like that. And then I'll just say the name of the container, hello Docker. I think I need -d to run it in the background. Let me take a quick stretch. And then I'm going to go. So it is running on port 7000. That's great. Die. Kill it. What's happening? What? What did I do wrong? Detachment. Oh, do I need -D? The immortal Docker container. Oh, the RM option says remove the container when it exits. That's fine. Yeah, I think I need a -D to run it in the background. Come on. What's happening here? All right. Q? It shouldn't need Q because it's a it's like literally the standard out of that container. I'm just gonna SSH back into that server. Once I'm in though, I can do a Docker PS that tells me what Docker containers are running, and I'm just gonna stop this one. Docker stop that container. Control Q. That does nothing. Once, if this command works, it should, yeah, there we go. So from another shell, I was able to kill that container. That's totally fine. So now if I do a Docker PS, we don't have any containers running. And now we'll run that again, but we'll run it as a daemon, meaning, or a daemon running in the background. There we go. Cool. And if I do a Docker PS, that thing's running behind the scenes. Awesome. And I can close this other terminal session. Okay, so this is a Docker container listening on port 7000. If we request it, so localhost 7000, we should get back hello world. Beautiful. Now we need to set up an Nginx config that will point to this. And let's do that. So we're going to go into my sites available. I'm just going to copy my API. We're going to put that into hello docker.coding.garden with super user permissions. We're going to edit it. And we need to, the only thing I need to change here is it's listening on port 7000. So we're going to proxy requests on port 7000. And we need to set the server name to be hello docker. So that's pretty much it. And you can see that it's the exact same setup as if I actually had that node process running on the machine itself inside of a Docker container. But really all we're doing is we're redirecting or proxying requests, nano, we're proxying requests to that Docker container, which is running on port 7000. So that should be good to go. And then we'll need to put it into my sites enabled. Oh, it uses a 4-space tab? That's cool. I like a 2-space tab, though. So we put it in sites enable, and then we'll restart Nginx. And now, if we go to hello docker.coding.garden, we see hello world. So ultimately, the main thing we did was we started the Docker container, we exposed it on a port, and then we created an Nginx configuration which routes requests on that port to the Docker container. So we should be good to go. Anybody else can request this as well. There you go. Hopefully that helped. Let me catch up. I think I got some follows. Yeah, I really need to do actual videos and tutorials on deploying. Thanks for the follow, Jokes949. Welcome. Vim Emacs people raged if they see you. Yeah, I don't care. Like, yeah, I don't use Vim. And thanks for the follow, Brandon McConnell. Welcome. Hello, Andrew. I would just throw my computer out the window and hope that that works. Yeah, probably. Hello, Mahidra. Welcome. If you're using Docker Toolbox, you just need to change localhost to your Docker machine IP. Okay, it's good to know. So the Nginx does not need to be in a container. No, it doesn't, but it could be. So I have Nginx running on the system itself, and Nginx running on the system is listening on port 80 and listening on port 443. But what you could do is you could create an Nginx container that is on a Docker network that all of your other Docker containers are on. And instead of installing Nginx on the machine, you would have that Nginx Docker container routing requests, accepting requests on port 80 and port 443, and you would map those ports. And then you would need to make sure that all of those machines were on the same internal Docker network. And your Nginx configs would be a little bit different because instead of localhost, you would need the internal Docker IP of the Docker container you want to route the request to. But that's absolutely possible as well. I just like Nginx running on the machine itself. Orktamer. I just got my first code test interview for a front-end developer position. What should I expect? I have no idea. So it depends on the type of job, the type of company. Yeah, it really depends. You can. It wouldn't hurt to ask, but it could be a whiteboarding interview where you are asked to solve a problem and you have to literally write code on a whiteboard to solve that problem. It could be a paired programming interview where you actually sit down with maybe a senior that you're going to be working with, or maybe like a peer, and you're given a problem and you both have to work on it to solve it. You could be given a coding problem where you're not pairing, but they're just watching you code on your computer and they want you to talk through how you're coding. It depends. And yeah, you could ask them to see what the what do you call it? What the format is. And yeah, I gotta go. But thanks everyone for hanging out. Hopefully this Docker stuff, and no, not only Docker, but not only that, but also Nginx stuff was pretty interesting too. So we talked about that, and you saw my Nginx config. I'll try to answer these questions next time. So doing Nginx on the machine is better than having it on a container. Using K8s then to orchestrate the containers wouldn't be a problem, I guess. Yeah, totally. I wouldn't say it's better. It's just what I prefer. I would imagine that your performance and delay is like less because it doesn't have to go through a container. But I wouldn't say it's better. It's really just a preference, and it depends on how you're going to be deploying things. You think web development can be a long-term career? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to be doing this forever. You're welcome, Joe. See you later, Noel. See you later, Ed. See you later, Katoli. See you later, Crit. Alrighty, shout outs to Andrew, who's our latest YouTube member. Much appreciated. The next step in my career is to go full-time on YouTube, I think. But I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon. See you later, Yash. Let's do this. Wait, I think I have it. Okay. Yeah, I gotta go. I'll try to stream this weekend, though there are some things I need to get done, but we'll see. Thanks for hanging out. Wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night. And hang out, because we're going to raid a channel. We'll figure out who we're going to raid, but if you stick around, we're going to do a raid. And if you're watching on YouTube, go to twitch.tv/codinggarden. You can join us in the raid. Are you streaming, Andrew? If you're streaming, we might raid you. All right. Have a wonderful day wherever you are. Here's this.